rubber. And so once your air is on, your beam will not move. And so this is considered a locking brake. And so when you want to advance your beam, then you would come to the front of the loom. And right in here is a valve that you can turn the brakes off. And it's that simple. There are air cylinders that move, that tighten up a cable on the brake drum in the back. And when you release it here in the front, then you can turn the beam by hand. So for warping and advancing forward, then you would turn the brake on and then you can tighten up on your warp, which is done here with your advancing crank. And that's a worm gear on the end of the cloth storage beam down inside. You can see that moving there. And worm gear gives you a lot of leverage on how much tension you put into your warp. And when time comes that you need to remove your woven rugs or cloth that's on your loom, you can release this knob here, which just simply tightens up the warp or the worm gear, and it raises it above. It disengages the gears back here. And now the cloth storage beam is free to turn. So you can remove your cloth or your rug that's on there. And just to reverse for re-engaging it, you pull the pin and drop that in and then lock your slide there. And you're ready to go again. So when you get your loom, when it's brand new, the cable, of course, is brand new also, and you will get a small amount of stretch in the cable, and so you will need to adjust that slack out of it to the point where when you release the brake, you'll be able to turn your beam by hand in either direction freely, or when the brake's on, then of course you want it to lock. And a good way to know how to adjust that is if you come inside and you look at the air cylinder here, and you see the rod on the air cylinder, you can see that it's not pulled all the way up in. A really good place to start this adjustment here when you're adjusting this, which I'll show you in just a minute, is pulling this rod halfway up into the cylinder when you turn it on. And so now I will go turn it off and I'll show you how to adjust that. Okay, so now the brake is turned off and you can see that there's there's 1 inch of this rod showing. And so then a good place to start your adjustment is to, when you turn the brake on, half of this, in other words half of an inch, is still exposed. And then if it's too tight and it will not release well enough to turn freely by hand, then you can make that adjustment here. And so you can see that I've got this much, showing right there. And so, I want this to end up pulling up a little bit more, I believe. And so I'll take this top nut here and I'll turn that down a few turns. And that, I think, is where I want that to end up. So I'll go ahead and turn the brake on and pull that up, and you can see that this is still a little less than a half, but let's check it. So definitely tight, and now if I release it, then I can definitely turn. So that's really a good spot right there to lock this up. Set that adjustment. So this was the nut that I turned to adjust it. These are jam nuts down here that'll run up to the bracket. And that is where I want to set it, right there. So I take 2 wrenches and I jam those nuts together. And then I'll take the top nut and run it down to the other jam nut. And then tighten those up, jam those together.